Hi, welcome to Breaking Free Fridays, or welcome back if you've been following this series. It's really great to have you here. And today I was inspired to talk about the problem with problems. And this occurred to me because one of the things that's so important to realize is so much about our perspective on problems is part of the issue. So it's not really that problems exist, it's that we often have this perception and this conditioning that has made us believe that there are not supposed to be problems, or there's a certain way that we are meant to handle problems. And, some of this gets rooted into fears of failure. And the reality is that the human experience is meant to include trials. It's meant to be filled with opportunities that challenge us, that test us, that ultimately help us learn and grow. And so it is all about reinforcing opportunities for progress and really letting go of perfectionism, releasing those fears around failure, and also even around comparison, because sometimes that gets looped into this whole realm as well. And the more that we are able to embrace those things that come up that we might be perceiving as problems, but with just a little bit of a perspective shift, we can see a bigger picture of them being just a part of the journey of life, navigating that adventure that is life. And, sometimes we might be presented with things that are more challenging than others. I know I'm not trying to minimize anything here. I mean, we all go through some really tough times. And, one of the things, a really great quote from the Bible, it's from Romans 8:28. And it's about, we know that in all things, God works for the good, for those who love him and who have been called according to his purpose. So it's not that we are exempt from trials. In fact, that's something that should be expected. It's part of what builds strength and deepens our resilience. And just on more of a lighthearted front, I love this because this is a quote from Pirates of the Caribbean, if you've seen it, from Captain Jack Sparrow. And he says, the problem is not the problem. It's your attitude about the problem. And you might think, well, sometimes how in the world could I have a different attitude? And so much of the opportunity around that comes from really transforming limiting beliefs. It comes from releasing fears. It comes from regulating our nervous system so that we have more space to be able to ebb and flow with the different challenges that come in. It's like thinking of like an ocean wave and just that ebb and flow. When you think about problems, one of the other things that can be so helpful is to realize that our experience in life is really about the meaning that we give our everything, how we're relating to connections and relationships, how we're relating to things outside of ourselves. And those meanings dictate a lot in our experiences. And even just think back to things that you may have considered problems that were incredibly challenging. With enough time, any challenge, we can find a treasure or a gift in it. I know that's been the case in my experience, and just working with a lot of different people. Oftentimes, those things that really take us to the brink, they have the deepest treasures. And so I invite you to kind of reflect on that for a moment and just see what comes up for you, where you can find some of those gifts, and maybe even inviting in more of that adventure into the way that we journey through life. As I'm sure you can relate, our life journey is definitely not just like this flat road and like this easygoing process. I mean, there's curves and there's turns and there's twists and there's ups and there's downs, there's valleys and there's peaks. And it's that contrast and that color that gives us perspective, and it gives us context on the experience of life. And it's also meant to help us know more about ourselves and what we prefer, what we like. It's that idea of we can't truly know light without knowing dark. We can't truly know what it feels like to be incredibly joyful without having experienced deep pain or hurt. So just let me know what you think in the comments and how that lands with you, and where you might have an opportunity to see problems a little bit differently and as something that maybe more to invite in as opposed to resist. So much of the difficulty comes from resisting instead of leaning in, and sometimes that takes a little bit of shifting, and it's just practice. And over time, it gets easier and easier. And, there's something I love that Tony Robbins talks about in terms of worthy opponents. And the more that you do the inner work and the more that you elevate in terms of consciousness and alignment, that adventure, it just becomes more natural as part of the flow. And so when you run across something that becomes more of a worthy opponent, it's like, ooh, oh, okay, here's another way I can up level or just really rise to that next level of opportunity and growth. And I love that idea about worthy opponent. Anyway, if you are loving these videos, please share them with friends and family, subscribe, send a like, and let me know in the comments some of the things that have been coming up for you recently. If there are certain topics that you would love to hear more about, I would be happy to share on those. So just keep me posted, and I hope you have a great next week. Here is to your next level of empowerment and breaking free. Okay, bye for now.